Hello, everybody. Well, welcome to another hanging session, Hanging with Hank. Um, and I'm with somebody today who I've known over 50 years. Um,
Oh my
a man
God.
who's, I know, isn't that something else?
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, I
Oh
know
my
him.
God.
I know him as Carl Brown, but Carlyle Brown is how he's known. And just a brief introduction, because it's too much to talk about. It will take like an hour and a half, right? But Carl's a playwright, performer, and artistic director and founder of the Minneapolis-based Carlyle Brown and Company. He's done a ton of plays, including The African Company Presents Richard III, Pure Confidence, The Negro of Peter the Great, The Pool Room, um, Down in the Mississippi, the Little Tommy Parker celebrated colored minstrel show, which we will talk about, Buffalo Hair, and many others. His solo work, because he also does solo performances, the Fula from America, Therapy and Resistance, The History of Religion and Acting Black. He's received a lot of commissions, grants. He's recipient of playwriting fellowships. He's been an artist in resident at NYU and a lot of different universities. Um, Last page here. Um, and some of his awards: 2006 recipient of the Black Theater Network's Winona Lee Fletcher Award, Guggenheim Fellow in 2008, 210 United Artists Fellow, 210 recipient of the Otto Rene Castillo Award for Political Theater, and 2018 William Ing Theater Festival honoree. Currently, he's an Andrew W. Mellon Foundation playwright in residence at Illusion Theater in Minneapolis. My friend, Carl Brown. Yo, man.
Hey, my man Hank.
How you doing?
I'm great, man. It's great to be here. It's great to be sitting here,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
know. I mean,
getting into it with you.
yeah, I mean, I was just thinking it's about, because I transferred to NYU 1966, and I'm figuring 67, 68 is kind of when we met as part of that crowd in Loeb
Yeah,
Street
yeah, yeah.
down in the thing. And my memory is there was a group I hung out with. They talked about you, and I think when we met, part of the stuff we had in common, certain common interests. Cyrano de Bergerac by Jose Ferrer,
Oh, yeah.
right? Oscar Brown Jr.,
Yes.
uh, Fats Waller, and then when Melvin Van Peebles first came on the scene, we used to talk a lot about him. But yeah,
Yeah.
NYU, man. I mean, what brought you there to NYU?
Um, I went to Kentucky State College before that, which was
Mm-hmm.
a really when I came out of high school, I didn't have any really direction. I didn't know what to do. But I just became interested in learning there. It was just like a good college at the time, in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
in the South, in the midst of the movement. And, I got caught up in it like everybody else. And so I thought like NYU would be an even better place to get an education, you know,
Mm.
and that was both right and wrong, you know what I mean, in terms of whatever you think an education is.
Right.
But it ended up being the right thing, for me to do, because, I met you and we had so many great colleagues that we
Yeah.
influenced each other and, did all kinds of crazy things. And, it was just a great moment to be alive. We was black and we was proud and we was saying
Oh
it out
man.
loud and, we were discovering ourselves as black people, it was, the 60s, it was a tip of the spear, and so, it was a good time to be alive and creative.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how eras evolve and then how certain people wind up navigating. We hear about these groups that seem to kind of navigate together. So you grew up in Manhattan, right? Is that
Yeah, up in Sugar Hill.
up in Sugar Hill?
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So that was so when we, because I transferred to NYU from Hunter College, and
yeah.
I was there mainly to study TV film production. That was kind of like my track. And what were you? Because my memories of us is more the social thing than ever talking about classes, But what at that point? Because I do remember when we hung out you talked about always wanting to read. You said even as a kid you would read labels on bottles and stuff, on jars and stuff.
Yeah, I
So
guess
was
so. Yeah.
was was writing on the forefront at that point at NYU in terms of what you're studying, or just kind of taking different
Oh
courses?
yeah, right. I mean, like, yeah, by then, I wanted to be a writer. So that was like, early in my life. By then I wanted to be a writer. And I thought that I wanted to be a novelist. Right? And I guess that's what took me to NYU because,
Mm,
writer need to make a living. So um, I thought to be, to be a journalist would be a good occupation for a writer.
mm,
Um, of course, it was not, but
yeah.
it's totally different kind of writing, and you know, where where in journalism, the who, what, and where is, right up front. In fiction, you want to withhold it. It's like
Mm,
about like sort of creating. So it's kind of totally the wrong habits for a writer of fiction. So, but it created some other habits, discipline in writing, and there at that department at NYU was. It wasn't until later that I realized what a great place, what a great opportunity, that
mm,
that it was. Some of my professors, they worked. There were people who were in the field, that they worked at Random House, and two of my
wow.
professors were, reporters, on the editorial staff at Newsday. So, they were people who were working in their field, whatever it was, whether it was, book publishing or journalism. There was this professor, John Gerasi. He wrote this book, The Great Fear in Latin America, which kind of broke down, the whole culture of foreign correspondence. And then it was, patronage job. If you'd been on the job 15, 20 years, it was like, then, they'd send you to Asia or South America somewhere, and you'd be like a character in a Clark Gable movie. You'd have your rickshaw boy that would tell you what was going on. And, and then he was saying for like Latin America, there were only 50 of these people, right?
Mm,
Just 50 of them covered all Latin America, middle-aged white men who were kind of like in a club, as opposed to, the kind of really hard-hitting journalism that we see, like, going like sort of every day.
mm,
It was really a particularly old school kind of thing. And he sort of blew that up and talked about how that what these guys were reporting, these just 50 people, created the policy that we were having in Latin America, which had, long leaning kind of implications. So I guess it was the journalism, but then it was the politics,
mm.
that I got, you know.
And of course, we're talking 66, 67, 68. You know, stuff was going on. You know,
Yeah,
at,
no, it was definitely,
at
it was
very
definitely going on. I mean, I've been actually sort of writing about this, like remembering that, I mean,
mm-hmm,
like, you know, um, we look at the arc of politics now, what was happening then was the kind of affirmative things that Black people did in the civil rights movement. Towards the end of that movement, it was the government considered us, national security threats. SCLC, and SNCC, and NAC, all of those groups were, under surveillance for, to some degree, however you might describe it, as being enemies of the state.
yeah,
And so, we experienced all that reality, and we were young, and we
yeah.
thought we could change the world by the time we were 30, and so it is kind of interesting to look back on all of that and how it influenced, who we become.
And in addition to that, here we are in the village, NYU, and culturally, all kind of stuff was going on in terms of
Oh
music,
yeah.
in terms of you know, out. I mean, stuff I didn't wind up going to see because there's so much to see. But I mean, living theater, all this kind of like
Oh yeah, exactly.
pushing
I
the
mean,
boundaries and stuff. It was, and really, it's like Washington Square. you
Yeah,
know,
right.
you go around the way to see Monk perform. You can go
Yeah,
over to see, you
right. You
know,
could go to see you could
and
go to
it
see
spent a lot of
Thelonious
money.
Monk at the Five Spot for the price of a beer,
Yeah.
right? You know, it was a employees market. You know,
Mm.
on a Friday you could tell that your boss he could take that job and shove it, and and you'd be working. You'd have another job Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest, right? Rent was cheap. It was like about a
Yeah.
week of your month's salary. You know, it was
Yeah. I
a
mean,
great place to look.
it was really interesting to, and I remember because for me, I was still living in the Bronx with my parents, so I was commuting back and forth, going downtown, going up there, and then all
Yeah,
of the, I talked about people. There were so many things to see that I just wound up soaking, and now I'm aware of how much it got into me, but just so many things were kind of happening. We now you told me, I didn't realize years after the fact that we were probably involved in one of the first black student organizations at a university, right? It was
that's that's what
some
I've been told. I mean, I have no way of really kind of
yeah,
making
yeah.
it a comparison, but that's what I've been told that that we were the first. And then, of course, I think the thing that wasn't noticed about us was that like there weren't really enough black students to really make like a group, right? But there were lots of foreign black students, from Africa and South America, and elite cats who were their parents sent them to NYU so that like um, all of these countries that become independent that they could
Yeah.
being part of the leadership, So that's why we were called the Black Allied Student
Because
Association.
my memory, because I wasn't one of the organizers, but my memory in the beginning, and we called it BASA,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
stood for Black American Student Association, and then it got changed to Black Allied Students Association, and
Right,
you're still
right.
able and we had, like, our headquarters was one of those brownstones in Washington Square North, because I remember the parties we'd have
Oh, well,
there.
that's, that came, we got that just before the strike. It was after
Okay.
Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
And then NYU, like all white liberal institutions, they
Like
say they're sorry and they make atonements
the guilt
by,
stuff.
giving you some kind of material thing. And what they gave us was,
That's what it.
this Afro-American Student Center. And then along with it came an ombudsman, someone selected by us, the students, the Black students,
Mm-hmm.
who would represent us, in the administration. And the
Mm.
guy we chose turned out to be Hatcher.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah, refresh my
Jeff,
memory about
right,
this. Yeah, because
Hatcher,
again, I
right.
wasn't involved in the main stuff. I was on the periphery, so you probably did. So, because
Well, yeah,
remember
I
that was a
mean, like
thing, right?
I was in the leadership of BASA, we were the ones that were negotiating it, like, and started the strike. So Hatcher, you know,
Yeah.
he was a guy expressed himself. Anyway, he said that Nixon and Albert Shanker and a couple other people, you know, were racist sons of bitches, right? An editorial in a New York paper. I mean, then, it was
Mm.
considered outrageous, right? So, of course, the university, um, particularly with Albert Shanker, they had to fire them because there was, um, there was in New York, there always has been, right? This is the unspoken thing, right? There is Jewish politics, right? There is this thing, this clash of issues and politics between blacks and Jews in New York, which nobody wants to talk about. Anne
Mm-hmm.
DeVere Smith touched on it and the thing that she kind of did at the public. But so Hatcher was a public school teacher. And what was happening in New York at the time was Ocean Hill, Brownsville,
Yeah.
Black community want to have control of their neighborhood schools, right? You know, who they hired and who they fired and who their children saw to teach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, you know, the way education is, you know, the money follows the pupil, right? You know, and the teachers union and whatever, why ever, the vast majority of teachers in the New York City public school system at the time, I don't know now, were Jewish.
Because you always had the Jewish holidays and nobody would show up in school. And they kept that up for the
Exactly,
longest
right. There
time.
was nobody
That's
there
the
to
Jewish,
teach.
that was
Right?
so,
I mean,
yeah.
exactly. You know, exactly. So, you know, people try to say it's not political, but, you know, when they wanted to do that, you know, the teachers union got involved. Albert Shanker, right? They got
Mm-hmm.
involved, right? NYU is, you know, supported in a large part by Jewish money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the immediate thing was, well, he said anti-Semitic things, we got to fire Hatch. So they fired him, right? And we said, no, wait a minute, that was not what our deal was, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you protect the freedom of speech of all kinds of people, but all of a sudden you draw the line here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we hired him, then we fire him. It's not your prerogative, right? So they were like, what? You got me, you know? And so, you know, we had a strike, right? Now, there wasn't many of us that there to make a strike effective, but it was effective because we did a great many naughty things, right? You know, which made the university, you know, at least the symbolic part, you know, the main building that faced Washington Square, where all the kind of political stuff was going on in front of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're talking about like, you know, the war of Vietnam, we're talking
Yeah.
about Nixon, you know, we're talking about like a horror show similar to the one here now,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so, you know, we had, you know, some impact and, you know, that was the moment in time where, you know, many of our colleagues began to disappear, right? And are suddenly involved in some criminal enterprise that we could not imagine that they would be into. You know, so, you know, it was clear that, you know, agencies of the government were meant to stop this, you know, that, you know, and for us, this, Ross, it looked as if that our enfranchisement was considered a national security threat. You know, that we were really indeed in a society that was determined to be racist.
This is all interesting because you know, as I tell people, when I was in school, I wasn't heavy duty political. I was in school doing what I needed to do because I wanted to work in TV or whatever. But I wasn't immune to knowing what was going on in the world. So when it came to the BASA, I went to the meetings just to catch up on what was happening,
Yeah.
and I never knew the specific stuff, but always was there to support and be there, you know, for what was going to go down. So it continues to be interesting information to like hear all the details, you know, from which like over 50 years ago when this happened, and yet
Yeah, really,
it's still,
yeah.
but it's still relevant to
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. I tell so many younger people, you know, it's similar things. There was, I seem to remember there was a like a weekend, like a Black Power weekend or some kind of thing. We had a lot of sessions at Slope Student Center, the part of like the black students, and I think I have a moment from that. This
Oh
is
no,
you.
is that me?
Yeah, we were all meeting. You know that these conference rooms in Loeb, and
Oh
we were
yeah,
in,
yeah, right,
and Loeb,
right.
by the way, was the student center, which now I think the Kimmel big performing arts thing is there at NYU. It used to be Loeb Student Center, Yeah, and Jimmy Carroll and a bunch of other
Oh yeah,
people, you
yeah,
know,
no,
but
right,
the
right,
shot of you
right.
um,
Rick
in the midst,
Rick
in the,
Spooner.
yeah, in the midst of the meeting. I remember because my thing was I was taking pictures. I guess that was my contribution to stuff, you know. So this
Wow.
is you sitting there, um, and just to show the other side, you know, there were serious things going on, but we also had a good time. So this is also, and you know, I said this to you recently. You know, you remember where this is?
Yeah, I know where that is. That's that's Reuben Hall. That's the woman's dormitory, I guess that we was in, at NYU, and I was the desk clerk.
I remember thinking, do they know
The
what they're
fox is
doing?
in the hen
I
house, right?
don't, do they know what they're doing? Carl really pulled a good one this time.
I can't recall how that happened, but yeah.
But you know,
Uh,
but to me, that again, that was all part of the mix. The politics, the social, you know, the thing. And in many ways, I feel our generation, the energy that was happening then, that was our foundation for create, is part of what continues to be the energy in us now. You know, I mean, in terms
mm,
of moving through it all and getting things done and seeing. So NYU, you know, I after I was at NYU for a little while, moving into the '70s, I know I would run into you every now and then. I don't think I saw you as much as I did at the NYU days, but I would run into you here and there, and I think you would live on East Third Street or something, West Third Street, and then I had moved into Manhattan, and then we moved into the '70s, and the loft thing becomes like a big deal. You know, like mid '70s, the idea of having a loft was like, what was this all about? And I remember getting a call from you saying you and your friend Sam Foster found the space, right?
yeah.
In Brooklyn. How did that come about? This is about 76, 77 now.
Yeah, you know,
Or do you even remember?
yeah, no, I do. I mean, I've been sort of thinking about this, as you like you said, like what did you say? How many years was that we've been, 50
Well,
years?
over 50. It's got to be 53,
Yeah,
68.
yeah, yeah. So when you say so, of course, one gets on that end of the thing, and it causes you to reflect, look
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Well, I as you know, I found myself, at sea, literally, I
Oh, yeah.
I worked at Outward Bound, and
Now, Outward Bound began when you were at NYU. You got involved in
no, it
that?
was sort of after NYU, you
And
know.
just for people who don't know what Outward Bound is, maybe a brief just description of what that is and how that led to sailing.
Well, Outward Bound is sort of it has been, I think it still is. It's sort of an adventure program. This one that I went to was a sea school, which is really more like a social experiment. It's about personal transformation through nature and challenge, in the wilderness. Um, and I got involved with that because the time we were talking about NYU, just a lot of people were getting riled up and being captured and stuff, and I decided I need to lay low, and I ended up there. For that's a whole story. And one thing led to another, one day led to another, and that was my profession. Being a sailor. You know?
Mm.
And but this thing about being a writer just kind of kept tickling me over time. I mean, I got really good at that job. I really loved it. It suited the peculiarities of my nature.
You being a
But
sailor,
yeah,
sailing. Okay.
yeah. But it's a highly intuitive occupation, and it's really about like, focusing. I mean, the sea is, a dangerous place, basically, and you're responsible. Um, but I couldn't stop like creating these stories in my head. And to the point where I felt like I wasn't really doing my job the way I should. So I thought, well, I'll just maybe take a year or two and get it out of my system.
Mm.
And so I came back to the city, and we got a loft. And yeah, of course, at the time, Sam, was really invested in being a writer, and so
Sam
we
Foster was the
Sam
original
Forster,
friend of
yeah,
ours.
and so we got this loft. I mean, we're looking at papers. I don't know how we found this loft, but it's over there and where Dumbo is now.
It wasn't
And
called Dumbo at that point, right?
no, it wasn't called
It
anything.
didn't have a
You know what I
name.
mean? It
It
wasn't
was
called
like,
anything
I'm
at
not
that
going.
point.
It's basically called, I'm not going over there.
Yeah, right, exactly,
That's
exactly.
basically, which is why it was
And I
cheap.
think the place on Water Street, we were on Front Street, and the
Yeah.
place on Water Street, there were people like pioneering those lofts. And that's what they called them then. They were like pioneering them lofts, like, of course, in um, uh, Soho was beginning to be more, popular and sort of
Yeah,
populated.
yeah.
But, the idea of the loft was, and of course, there were just lots of space there. And so, not having really taken any classes in theater, not really knowing anything in theater, probably just pure ignorant arrogance. I said, well, I'll take some time off and we'll put on some plays and see how this goes. And so, in order to put on a play, you need space. And so, I knew that much. I wasn't that stupid, theater. And, and so we got this guy, this Hasidic guy. He showed us the space, and it was 3,600 square feet. It had these huge arch windows. The ceilings were like, I don't know, what was it, 12 feet or more, or maybe 14
More than
feet?
that, I think. Yeah,
No, it
yeah,
was
because you had the top floor, so this
yeah,
was
we were on the
even
top
higher
floor.
up there.
Gorgeous views of Brooklyn and stuff like that, Of course, it was like a dump. I think it was like some kind of jewelry factory or something like that.
Was a lot of pocketbooks there or something?
Yeah. It was a pocketbook factory.
And omelets and all the things that you would.
Yeah. It was a sweatshop. It had been a sweatshop.
Basically, yeah.
And so we asked the guy, how much, and he said like, $350 a month. So, but even if we didn't want it, we had to like say, well, okay, So and then after that, you were part of that, then after that, you had to like learn absolutely everything that you had to do,
Everything.
Because no shit, suddenly you're a carpenter and a plumber and this and that. I mean, it was really a kind of amazing adventure. And because the spaces in that building were big, and in that neighborhood, people say now, it attracted certain kind of artists,
Yeah.
right? Who needed space to do big stuff. And they were like, visual artists. And, because visual artists have to make things, Debbie, made these huge concrete sculptures.
Masters, right?
Debbie Masters, right?
Right.
And they had to be lifted out, and I mean, so they had just like absolutely tremendous resources about like building shit and all kinds of things that there was to learn. And of course, they were serious, and we were just like a great community. We're all poor, so we're like sharing meals together and partying together.
And I remember when you told me about it, I was living on 16th Street.
Yeah,
7th
right,
Avenue.
right.
So I went, and I was interested in the loft thing, but to me, it was like completely out of. I don't know anything about. And I went out to help you guys. I would get on the subway and went out, and it was, and just so people know, when Carl says they got 3,600 square feet, that was a quarter of the floor. That was one quarter, and it was only defined. There was no walls separating the different spaces people had. So I was helping you knock down walls and stuff, taking nails and straightening them out to reuse them again. Right? Remember that? Getting stuff out of there and then putting up walls to separate all the different spaces. But and then I got intrigued by doing that, and then I asked about a space downstairs, and I had the smallest space because mine was just 3,000 feet. Mine was just 3,200.
Yeah.
But,
well, that's the thing, that's what artists did in the whole era of that loft thing. Everybody would keep like saying, well, I'm going to cut my loft in leave a third and have somebody else pay our rent.
Yeah. I never got that.
Yeah.
But so I came out, so I wound up getting a space downstairs, and then when we were all learning, for me, in terms of my personality, it was a great experience because, I've always been used to, as an only child, whatever, everything is just so boom, 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 and I have a tendency to do everything on my own. I do it myself. Well, the loft thing, like, you can't do everything by yourself. You got to work with people, and then then you work it out with people. Either someone helps you out, then you help them out, or the electric bill is split by 5 different spaces. So the communal thing for me was an education that opened me up more, just in terms of taking chances and stuff. But then for all of us, the idea of thinking big, expanding your mind about, you sit there, well, let's do this. Well, what about let's have an intercom. Let's, the possibilities, as opposed to, you can't, I think that's another thing that influences. And because we're so many different kind of artists, the writing we'll talk about in a minute, but the visual and sculptures and whatever, it all influenced. And because until all the spaces were distinctly separate from each other, sometimes it's just a curtain separating your space from someone else's. So, there was a lot of, it was one big, interesting, time with family and stuff. And again, the economy was still such that you didn't need a heck of a lot of money. I remember when we found a place to get wood, and it was a cheap place, and we used to jokingly call it zigzag lumber. I don't remember that because the wood was cheap because it wasn't always straight. It was curved. And we used these to make studs in the walls and stuff. So it's called zigzag, and sometimes you have to force it. But anyway, for me, it was just a, expand. And at that point, leading into the whole theater thing, by this point, I had been working in TV, but starting to get involved in theater and mime, and working with this mime group that we all formed with my friends Susan Goldberg and Marcy Arlen. We started with Renee. So I was developing some of that and doing doing my research about Black performers, and then coming to this loft and interacting with all these other artists and stuff had a lot of influence on me. So when it got to the point of let's put on a show, like what were the early kernels of ideas of what became eventually Laughing Mirror Theater? How did that pop up in your mind, and how would you describe that to people? And this is a group of us in DUMBO in the loft era. So,
well, I don't know why I did that first play, right? I just figured I just had to get my foot in the water, so I'd written this play called Othello, the Last of the Sweet Talk, and the play is the two or is it three missing bedrooms of the offstage bedroom scenes in Shakespeare's Othello. And I guess part of it was the play is not helpful about a couple of things, and it's the time period. I've always been curious about that there were things that Shakespeare's audience took for granted, which are exotic or sort of foreign to us. And one is just sort of the idea about, well, the timeline, that like, when they get to Cyprus, and he goes to bed, after he arrives in the storm, and Desdemona's there, and they're going to the bed, which is actually the first time that they've had to sort of, what do you call it, consummate their marriage, right? Because when he left back when he was in Venice, it was like, all right, you go now. You have 15 minutes. Say goodbye to your wife. Go fight the war. So the whole context of the drama is really like about 48 hours, right? So they don't really know each other, right? They don't really have any basis for. They have no history, and the play's not really that good at making that clear to us, right? And then the other thing is that it's not so much that he was for the Elizabethans. It's not so much that he was black, right? But he's a Muslim. Well, he's not. It's like Obama, well, he's not a Muslim, but he's Christian, but he's a Muslim. You know what I mean? Like, and that is in the era in which they lived, right? So the thing I was always curious about, which this play didn't answer, was, why did Shakespeare do that? Why did he make this character? It wasn't just that he was black, but he was a foreigner who exhibited all the virtues of Elizabethan gentlemen, right? So the audience that was watching that, they must have been gobsmacked by that, like, what? You know what I mean? And, and their ideas about race were not like ours, right? I mean, they were certainly xenophobic, English, right? They call the Italians Dagos and whatever. I mean, they didn't like anybody, So, that's why all those comedies that Shakespeare writes are, they happen to Italians, because we Englishmen, we don't behave like that.
We would.
But anyway, all of those things were like, I was sort of curious about them. And so I thought I would write this play in iambic pentameter, which included these sort of bedroom scenes to illustrate my thesis about what is, what's really going on in the play. And, so there I was, I had a play, original play by me. I don't think there was another original play. I mean, I think that might have been the first play I ever wrote. So, I mean, that was the play I had. And, so just one thing led to another, right? I mean, I only did it because I didn't know shit, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just like, well, we got to cast people. Yeah, we got to where are we going to get actors? And somebody says, well, take the trade paper,
Right.
And you remember, right? And so it just happened like that. So put an ad in the trade paper. And
backstage, show business.
Yeah, right. And what the hell? I didn't know. It's New York, of course. All kinds of actors are gonna. Every actor was. It's just certainly more actors than there are jobs or things that act in. So you're in New York, for God's sake. So I mean, I didn't realize that. So there were like lines of people coming up to the loft. I mean, I had no idea, so I had to deal with that. And then it was
and back then, that was a scary neighborhood.
Yeah, right. Right. And they came out there.
But those of you who like Dumbo now is nothing like 1977, 1970.
No.
You get off that F train, So I'm just saying. So these actors who come out to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's got all these train stations. It looks like a set from On the Waterfront.
Right.
It's like. Yeah, it's definitely. It was sort of a different time. Yeah, a lot of people came out and then had to figure out, oh, well, how do I pick these actors? I didn't know shit, and I just kept stumbling along that way until I was reading books and trying to learn about theater and fighting and what to do and sort of whatever. I mean, I guess in some ways it was like a grad school without having any undergraduate education in theater, but so I came upon an essay in a book about directing written by Tyrone Guthrie. And that sorted me out, at least in the near term. It made me feel like, oh, yeah, I could do this, right? You know, I mean, and you know, when I read it, I said, whoa, there's a lot of shit I should have done.
Right.
I should have read this book before, but you know, and it was called, you know, An Audience of One was the essay. And it was really about the director being the representative of the audience. And you know, I mean, you know, the basic questions is, can I see it? Can I hear it? Does it make any sense? Right? And I said, whoa, I could understand that a director needs to be able to assure that at least those things are happening. So it gave me a kind of grounding, and you know, we went on and, you know, and did the play, you know, but until I read that book, I mean, and even after, I mean, you know, the actors did whatever the hell they wanted to, you know, and if the actress was pretty and wanted to do something, I said, yes, you know what I mean? You know, so, and, you know, through a lot of diversity, you know, we pulled it off.
So just so the Laughing Mirror Theater Company, right? When you came up with that idea, do you remember why you got the name? Because basically, you know, just so people understand, we lived in this huge loft building. Carl's loft was upstairs, and this is where the performances happen. And in terms of resources, in terms of stuff, at one point, we need some chairs. Then you found out there was a church down the way that had chairs, right? You got chairs from the church, and then one of our friends, Rose, who was the scenic artist, helped out with some of the productions and stuff. And then he even wrote up a little manifesto about, you know, because it was me, Anthony Bowman, who lived across the street in the other building. Sam was part of it too, right, in terms of the core.
Yeah, I mean, you know, everybody got involved. You know, the thing was, you know,
and we called it Laughing Mirror Theater, just so you understand, those who were watching.
Yeah, right. We called it because it was funny. You know, when you look in the mirror, you laugh. You know, when you get a realization about things. So yeah, you know, that was a great thing about that, was it, like, you know, people said, you know, we got to help this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's doing it. And, you know, people did, you know, like with the chairs, you know, because somebody said, I guess they knew me. They said, hey, Carl, do you have any chairs? I said, chairs? I got
right. You gotta sit down.
I had that that red Volkswagen Bus that I got. There was that construction job for the farm workers, and I got stiffed, and they said, well, hey, we'll give you this bus. So I had
that's how you got it.
Yeah, which helped with some things, you know what I mean? But like, I remember, like, and you know, Luke Mon, he was with me on the weekends and stuff like that.
And just tell people who Luke Mon is.
Luke Mon's my son. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Who was a famous fellow in his own right, a musician and a theatrical sound designer now. But then he was just a kid, you know, who was watching his father go through this, you know, seemingly disaster every day. But we had the distinction of running out of gas in that thing on 3 bridges over the course of putting this show together. Yeah.
Wow. You know, I tell people, because it's just like, you know, it was literally Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. Let's put on a show. That was the kind of thing where you have space. You do stuff.
It was totally naive.
And a lot of different things were happening around. Now, actually, there's actually one piece that Carl did in which wound up having an actor play a dead body. Would you believe that? Had somebody play a dead body. What piece was that?
Smithers and Snide. You know, Smithers and Snide was a direct response to my writing the Shakespeare play in iambic pentameter. And I don't know where the idea from the plot of the story came from, but I wanted to write something that had so much like activity, you know, that they couldn't be acting. I realized that, like, you know, acting for actors can be a dangerous thing, you know. Yeah, you know, and so you know, with Shakespeare, there was just so much chest beating and gesticulating and overacting. I said, Jesus Christ, we got to put a stop to this somehow. And so I wrote this play, this crazy play about these two guys, Smithers and Snide. And, you know, there were people who came together after, the Othello play and said, hey, you know, we should keep doing this, you know. So they were the ones who I said, oh, okay, we'll start a company. So I wrote this play, which features two white guys, but I can't give two white guys the part. I have to have, you know, these two brothers, Anthony and Eric. Was that his name?
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah. Anthony and Eric played the part of these two guys, and the story is that these two guys are a couple of grifters, and you know, one of them is always. It comes from it's always. I'm always disturbed by these comedy shows, you know, Abbott and Costello, Dean Martin, and Jerry Lewis.
Comedy
all these
teams.
Stories where one guy just abuses another guy in the name of friendship.
Long
you know what I mean? And it's just, it's just like, it's just like we're just sort of laughing at an oppression of one guy over another, you know. You know, they're both ding-dongs, you know what I mean? So, you know, but one guy's...
one acts like they're like thinks that he knows it more than the other, knows more than the other.
Yeah, and he always gets the girl, and he gets the best lines, and, you know, I mean, he's a fall for the funny guy, but, you know, the relationship, there seems to be something very American about the relationship and our acceptance of sort of the oppressive nature of this thing that we... So it was kind of like, so I wanted to have something like that that was funny, but sort of kind of demonstrated this relationship that I was being critical of. So what they're doing in the play is that they are, they've been hired by this Black woman to dig up her husband. And that's because her husband was a bigamist and he died with the other woman. So, you know, she's brokenhearted. So all she could do is, you know, dig his ass up and look in his face and give him a piece of her mind. That's really all that she really, you know, wants to do. And she's hired these two white grifters to dig the body up. And so, so you were downstairs, right? You were already in the loft.
Yeah.
And we were shooting the breeze. And I said, you know, you got to help me put together a dummy for this dead body, you know? And then you said,
well, I'm a mime and I and I understand physical stuff. Maybe I could be the dead body. You know, and then it's kind of like, did I really say that?
Well, when you said that, I mean, did you know what you were going to bring to the thing, or did you know right?
Well, you know, I think it's like so much of what we're talking about, which I pay more attention to now. You sometimes intuitively will say things without necessarily knowing specifically what you're going to do, but somehow I think my memory is, as you described, you talking about the dummy. I remember thinking like that would not work. That would really a dummy. There's got to be something, you know. It's
alive.
It's got to look like a body. So I think I just assumed let me just try it. I think it was also part of the period of time I was getting more adventurous than I had been before. And then like anything else, I think we discovered in performance when we started working on it, because I'd been doing all this physical stuff, there's a point there's a point in the play where you know they take me out of the coffin and kind of put me in a bag, and then the big line is,
"Oh, he don't fit."
"You
Yeah,
don't fit."
yeah, the whole thing. But you know, I mean, I know it's just really. I mean, you know
But
what
in,
you
in
did
rehearsal, I
was
think in rehearsal is when I started to realize what I could bring to it in terms of
well,
the
right,
comedy
yeah,
being
yeah,
dead and to do the comedy and then trust exercises between me and them because I had to get my eyes closed and I had to trust them, but I also had the sense in doing it, oh, this could be funny, you know. So
oh, hilarious! It was
and
hilarious.
feedback from
It
you was
wouldn't
very
have been a
helpful,
oh,
you
it
know.
wouldn't have been a play without it. And I have to say that like I it was really a seminal moment for me in terms of theater, you know, as a theater practitioner, you know, to be a part of that experience. I mean, the thing was just magical, and some crazy shit happened around it, you know, just like, you know, like surrounding it. I mean, you couldn't believe it, you know, but it was such it was such a bleeding education because that thing there, right, was um, you know, I think it's really important. Um, Comedy is really an important tool in any writer, artist, or theater artist toolkit. You know what I mean? Because it just, you know, the kind of way it needs to make, I mean, like, you know, the connection with the audience. So the thing is, first of all, you know, these two idiots arguing about whether you should be transported in a coffin or in a sack. You know what I mean? And, you know, so that's just sort of funny in itself. And one guy just bullies the other into stuffing you into a sack. And um, and it's not easy because, you know, Hank's got rigor mortis,
I
and
get
it's
rigor
not like,
mortis.
yeah, it's not. It's not like if you put his arm over there and sort of just, you know, lay there, fall down like, you know, naturally. I mean, the guy's he's a stiff, for God's sake.
Literally.
You know, and once that happened, the possibilities were endless. I mean, you and those guys had so much fun. You and Anthony, you know, like, you know, how could it be so funny putting a guy in a bag? But like, you know, we had a punchline sitting there waiting because the audience, you know, they had this big argument about like, well, should it be in a bag? And he said, just stuff his ass in the sack. You know, so he's stuffing in the sack, and all this hilarious thing is going on. And then pretty soon, the audience sees pretty soon that he's not going to fit in the sack. You know, the sack is not big enough for the body, you know. And so Anthony's character, he's stuffing in the sack and he turns aside and he says, "Snide," you know, and every night somebody in the audience, they say the next line. They say, "He don't fit." And then when Anthony says he don't fit, everybody's just roaring, falling down, laughing.
And here's the thing.
You know?
Here's the thing. You know, you hear about people being in comedies and not breaking, and not cracking up. I'm a stiff, right? You know? And I know the laugh is coming, right? You know, and like I can't break, I can't laugh, you know. And but I do think now I think about it, I think I found a way to have a slight smile on my face, but not like a big thing. You know, I was trying to figure out how to work this dead, you know.
Well, you know, I don't know what it was, whether you planned it or whatever, you know. I mean, you know, your face was passive, but like you exuded something that just completed it. It made us feel like you were in on it. You know what I mean? Like the stiff was in on it.
And a few details. First of all, the two characters were played in whiteface, right?
Yeah, right.
So let's not because, and also conversations that Carl and I would have, which leads into this other piece we'll talk about. You know, I've been doing all this research about blackface minstrelsy and I've done clowning and all this about stuff. So so there was that, and then it was supposed to change me, right? So my ass is sticking out. And
the thing is, one of the things,
we went through whether I should be, you know, with or without the underwear in the thing, right? You know, That was the moment. Why did I talk myself into this? Man, anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know,
It was great.
sort of conceptually you accepted the convention, but then after doing it a couple of times, you know, people go like, hey, that guy's got his butt hanging out, you know.
Because the
Uh,
idea was she wanted turned around so you could say "kiss my ass" or something.
yeah,
That's
that
the
was his
idea.
last thing in
Yeah,
the world. He
to
said he
say
could kiss my black ass.
so the
You know?
idea was that he'd be changed and a pair of pants with his butt sticking out. Kiss my ass.
Right,
And
right, right.
we had an interesting rehearsal once, right? An on location rehearsal. Remember?
Yeah,
You're
we
in your old neighborhood, right?
in my old neighborhood. I
Explain
can't
that.
believe it.
Explain that. Because the whole play takes place in the cemetery, right? And I
Yeah,
think Rose created a set for us, but then in order to get some authentic vibes and feeling, we did the decision was made to rehearse.
yeah. You know, the thing was that like it just didn't look like Anthony and Eric were. What was missing was they weren't in a place that they were not supposed to be.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they
That kind
weren't
of like
the
we gotta get
graveyard and
you
stuff
right.
like that. You know, so let's do this. And the graveyard down from the house that I grew up in, we used to go in there all the time, play Ring Alivio and
Right
whatever.
up to
You know, all kinds.
150, which right off of
Is it
157th Street,
158th Street? Oh, it's
58th.
155th Street,
Yeah, like
down
where
by
the Indian Museum used to be up there, but now it's a
right,
different
right,
thing. But
right,
yeah,
right, down by where the Museum used to be. Yeah, 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 down that hill there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we actually snuck, and you knew a way to sneak into the cemetery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
We
we
used to go
did
and
we
play.
did.
What is that game? Ring Alivio there when we were a kid.
So a
Of
bunch
course,
of
that's
us
what I
went
did.
up
Yeah.
there, and then because the other thing about the play, which I could not do now because I'm gotten more claustrophobic in my old age.
Oh, is you're in
But
that coffin all the
for
time.
the first half of the play, I'm in a coffin until they open it up. So to rehearse at the cemetery, they actually had me laid down on top of a grave, but to this day, I just remember hearing the dialogue, and it just sounded so different and eerie in the
Oh yeah,
location. There was like this thing about it was like to rehearse in a cemetery late
yeah,
at night,
right. No,
snuck in.
that changed the whole thing. And after that, you know, every
For all
performance
of
was
us,
sort of
yeah,
imbued with that. It
yeah,
was a
yeah.
great show. Insane, but
But
I learned so much.
so here's some images from that time. So at one point there was a reading of some of your works in Dumbo, and
Oh right, yeah.
we
And
did
that's that was one of the lofts. That's on Rose's side, isn't it?
yeah, that the shot is in the loft. It's you can barely see it, and then it's just above Midtown. Uh, uh,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
so
we
you can
did a
see
reading of something there,
reading
didn't we?
something. Yeah, the
Yeah.
1981. I made a note of this, so that's a fly from that. And then you did talk about this is a small fly for the Othello
The
piece that you
last of the
talked
sweet
about.
talk.
Sweet talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But then the piece that means something to me also for little
Little
Tommy
Tommy
Parker.
Parker.
Oops, wait a minute. We'll get to that. So
Wow.
little Tommy Parker, like that photo, right? There's a story about that photo.
Oh yeah. I didn't know about this photo until I was writing the play. The play was
Hmm.
originally called The End Man, and
Oh,
I was telling my mother about it, and she said, "Oh, that's interesting." And she said, "What the hell does mean?" My great uncle or my granduncle was a was a performer, and she came out with that photo, little
oh,
Tommy Parker in a class by himself.
mm,
And so he was my grandmother's brother,
mm.
and he ran away from home when he was like a teenager, like maybe like maybe 13 or 12 or 13 or something like that. And the next thing the family heard from him was that photo, which was taken in some kind of studio. So he must have went away and became like in show business, and really no one really knows anything more about him than that, you know.
Mm.
And So I call the play the Little Tommy Parker Celebrated Colored Minstrel Show. It helped me build the narrative to see that picture. And
And then we did a few readings of it, and
yeah, we did one down,
other
like downtown somewhere, and then another one in
yeah, and then out you went out someplace else, and the interesting thing
someplace in
is,
Connecticut.
yeah, in
Yeah.
Connecticut and a few other things, and the other interesting story too, in terms of our influences on each other, was the whole blackface thing. Because at this point, I had been involved in mime, then I got involved in clowning, because I got interested in clowning, so I had all kind of makeup, and a lot of my research had been studying the concept of the fool. What was that all about? The idea of the trickster, clowns globally all over the world and stuff. So when you wrote this play and realized these guys were going to have to wear blackface, we had this moment when you came down to my loft, right?
Yeah, we put
For,
on blackface in
and
front of each other.
we put on, and that was interesting. You know?
Yeah, man, that was really, and you know what? Everybody's sense. I mean, I wouldn't say that play's been done a lot, but everybody's sense. I mean, everybody sort of experiences that journey because it's in the play. They have to
Mm-hmm.
put the makeup on in the play. What I wanted was the audience to be witness to that experience of
Mm-hmm.
transforming yourself into, you know, something that
Yeah.
isn't you at all, in order to
Yeah.
make a living. So yeah, and that was like came after Smithers and Stein. So I have to say, I mean, the Loft, there were three works kind of created there, which
Mm.
propelled
Sparkle.
me into a career in the theater because Little
Yeah.
Tommy Parker, Penumbra did it, and that was my first
That's what got going.
professional production. Yeah, so that got a career going. So yeah, they all one flowed into another.
And for me, as I mentioned too, working with you all just helped me just in terms of other possibilities in terms of performing, and then we helped each other because when I was starting to at that when I moved into the loft, I had been part of a mime group, Garden Variety Mime Theater. We all studied with the swimmer Renee who treated us, and also Tony Montanaro.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
had,
yeah.
I
And
had and
Marcy
then
was in there, and
Marcy and Susan and Lincoln
Susan.
Taldo, a few other people. Then I
Yeah,
had left the group, but I was still friendly with them. But at that point, I was interested in doing other stuff and to working with Laughing Mirror, and then starting to work on my own solo stuff. And I did a
right.
solo when I decided to do my first solo show. You were very helpful because I think you wrote the press release. I didn't know like how to do that,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
again, learning from each other. And then I did it at the Elia Pomari's Vital Arts Center, and I think you helped with lights and stuff. And then when I was working with certain solo pieces, you were kind of like the eyes for me, in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
feedback and stuff. So I think that mutual influence in terms of developing things and moving on was
Well,
really important
when
those days.
it was very important, and when like when you cycle off into that from Little Tommy Parker, it makes me think that in terms of being Black theater artists, we were looking toward our own traditions,
Hmm.
and legacies of the past that were left to us by other people. It wasn't like we were like, whoa, Western theater, but it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
we embraced other, you know, kind of traditions. I remember when I wanted to, you know, yeah, when I was like, at that time, seriously thinking about, like I took the jazz classes with Pepsi and
Hey,
Tony
Tony,
Powell,
Tony
tap
White took
jazz.
some tap
Tony
classes,
White, I mean, yeah, right,
and then you even didn't you turn me on to Potter's Field, Michael Moriarty, the
yeah,
acting
yeah. We
thing.
took Shakespeare's class. Yeah, exactly,
We just
exactly.
checked into all different kind of things
Yeah, we were
to
just checking into all different kind of
and also I
things.
think the other thing is too. I think for me was really important, um, as opposed to at the time a lot of black theater groups because our influences were so, like to me, Oscar Brown Jr.'s theater.
Yeah, oh, no, yeah,
So,
right.
and
No,
then,
exactly.
and even before Melvin Band People did his plays, his albums, Little Done, the Zampu Uji, and all that.
Well, that's
That
what I
was,
mean,
and
that's
so
what I
that's the
mean,
thing that you and I think, we're trying to mine, and also because all of my research about black minstrelsy and trying to bring some kind of dignity to what these people were doing, the step and fetches, whatever. It's like, wait a minute, these are talented people doing this stuff, and I think that was important to be supportive of each other doing that route as opposed to, anyway, I don't know. It was,
Yeah, it's really true. Now
we had
that
a,
you
we had a,
mention,
we
I
had a,
mean,
we had a broader kind of thing.
we
Go
never
ahead.
really talked about the significance of it. But I say, in the work that I'm doing now, and the particularly the curating work with like you know black theater artists from the Afro-Atlantic culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess we were seeking the same source. It wasn't like we were denying like Western theater, because theater is like a Western art form,
Mm-hmm.
but a black outfit, like I consider myself a proponent of the African griots, right?
Mm-hmm.
The storytellers, which is Oscar Brown Jr., Cab Calloway, whatever. I mean, it's sort of like
Fats
kind of
Waller.
in the music. Yeah, it's all, we were all kind of into that, felt like they were, Melvin Van Peebles, for God's sake, I mean, and even when you think of the trajectory of that brother's life, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's kind of all about that. It's really kind of hard to explain, but
And now,
you know what I'm saying.
yeah, and I do want to show some other images and stuff. But one of the things that was also curious to me is, what do you feel is your relationship between your experience as a sailor and a captain in sailing and theater, in terms of working with people and putting stuff,
Well, I'm actually kind of writing something like that to kind of put it together.
because
A
there's
friend
still,
of mine who's a writer and historian who was also like a shipmate did this excellent lecture on craft, where he connected, being a sailor, a practitioner of sailing, and being a writer,
mm,
and the nature, of the profession, the things in which we talk about that, like someone has to learn to be a sailor, is described as the arts of a sailor.
mm, it's interesting, yeah. Well, here's some things that might trigger off some, yeah. Just,
Oh, wow.
so what's this?
That's
A
the early
lab,
days at the Playwright Center.
and where is that?
That's in Minneapolis. And it's still going on. It's a development resource for for writers for the theater.
So when it
And
was pretty much Penumbra brought you out to Minneapolis once they did your thing, and you pretty much just stayed there. So this photos from the early days of you.
yeah, it was before I
Getting
moved
involved.
there. I don't remember quite where that was.
Mm.
I think when if I look at these people and I think, God, Jesus Christ, go so freaking young. But
Play loud.
yeah, it was a play labs, and the play I was working on there was Buffalo Hair,
Mm.
which is yeah, where I met Barb too.
Mm. Wow. So earlier, Carl made reference to his son Luqman Brown, and this is a shot of Carl with Luqman Brown and Stu, right?
Yeah, that's Stu. Yeah,
Yes,
Passing Strains.
that that was one of those things where I almost blew not seeing that, because it really wasn't advertised well, because they didn't know how to push it. And somebody saw that show and says, "Hank, you have to see this show." And I saw it on Broadway. It's like, wow, that really
Oh man, yeah,
is his
it
kind of
was.
work. It was. So when I heard that Luke was going to do something for Stu, I said, oh man, oh yeah, that's. So and
Yes,
Luke Brown, I used to teach him magic tricks when we lived in the loft. That was my influence on him. He was like 6 or 7. I'd be teaching him magic tricks, and then he would like when any of us came around, he'd show the magic tricks that I taught him. So
I remember, when
that's
he was
what I gave him.
or you remember when he was like, 8, 9, 10, he'd be in a loft at all the parties,
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
these splits and stuff like that. So yeah, he was in that show. Yeah.
So this is with Woody King
Yeah.
and Weldon, right?
Charlie Weldon, yeah.
Charles Weldon.
Charles Weldon.
And by this
Yeah.
time, you're really involved in theater and stuff, and people that, yeah.
Yeah, I forget when that's around the time where I got that Otto Costello Award for political
Okay.
theater.
And then what's this with John Lewis?
Yeah, I got commissioned to do a play about Freedom Summer '64. The registration drive in Mississippi. Not just because I was a playwright, but I've done some work in the museum field, and I was like part of the curatorial team of the Underground Railroad Freedom Center, which is not far from where this picture's taken. But of course, John Lewis, of course, was involved in many aspects of the civil rights movement. And we, as part of the research of the play, and because I had been involved in music work, we put up an exhibit so the students can understand the history. And a philosophy professor there at Miami University of Ohio was the best man, or John was the best man in his wedding. They knew each other from those days. And so he came to visit and came to see the exhibit. Cool guy. And there is
Melvin Van Peebles, man. He was definitely one of my heroes in terms of just his
Lily
sweet
do the Zam Poogie every time he pull her coattail.
Do it, Lily. Do it, Lily. and then there was the one where the Women's House of Detention, where the library.
Right? Do you remember that place? It was in that tri-corner thing off of 6th Avenue.
Yeah, where the Jefferson Library is.
Yeah.
There's a whole other conversation about it.
Oh, man, guys be coming out there in the middle of the night yelling up to their girlfriends.
I tell you a funny story about Melvin Van Peebles. For years I taught this course, African American Performance History. Yeah. And the last few years, so they would do a paper on somebody. So one of my students wanted to do a paper on Melvin Van Peebles. So I said, listen, I'm in the same union, the Directors Guild, Melvin Van Peebles, and there's a directory. Now, often they just have your agent's number, but it might be, let me look up to see if there's a contact information. Maybe you can give him a call. So I looked it up, and it turns out his home number was in the directory.
Oh, wow.
So I gave it to the student. I said, you never know. Make the phone call, take a chance, whatever. So I give her the phone number, and next class, I said, so did you call him up? I got enough nerve together. So I said, what happened? I called him up. And I said, is this Melvin Van Peebles? And he says, I don't know. Do I owe you money? And she said, no. And then she consented to an interview with her. The fact that he answers, do I owe you money? Was like,
really?
That sounds like him. Oh, yeah, but don't play us cheap and all those things. And, he did his thing, man.
This was, at the ceremony. This picture was taken at the ceremony for the Otto Rene Costello Award in political theater, and he and I got it at the same round. Both got it, and he when he was called up for his award, the acceptance award, his acceptance speech was. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, but it's how many times you get the fuck back up. Took his award and gone, So
it looks like you're in conversation with somebody here.
Well, that's
explain.
That's William Inge, and I'm just being sort of a smart ass. Of course, he's a playwright, and he's dead, But He wrote some great theater and films. You know, the one I guess most well known is Splendor in the Glass,
Mm.
in the Grass. And there's an award given out annually to honor a writer, you know, in the spirit of William Inch. So I thought I'd, you know, thank him personally.
And there you are getting the
And there
award.
I am, with the award. It
Thank
was
you.
really like it's really a great, honor. I mean, some people in that league are like, you know, August Wilson and Arthur Miller, and
Wow.
you know, so
Yeah.
it's sort of good company to be in. So I was really honored. And then what they do is that they have all your friends come and do segments of your plays, and it's really great.
Mm. And this is one of your more recent ventures.
What I've done, this is the first iteration of a residency. I curated in this residency space in France, um, just exploring um, Afro-Atlantic theater. Um, you know, the sort of the African connection between Africa and the rest of, well, the Atlantic Basin, America and South America and England and whatever. Um, the transfer from Africa to the New World cultures in uh, dance, religiosity, art objects, music, is obvious. Um,
Mm.
and so what I've been interested in is exploring that in theater, which is a Western art form in terms of text-based artists and what artists are doing whose identity is larger than being, local black folks with a hyphen, you know,
Mm.
like African American or English American or
Yeah.
whatever, who
Broader.
sort of see themselves in a larger palette,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is believe, well, all of us in the new world, we are, the our ancestors are all those people in the slave ships, right? And they gave birth to every black person born in a new world, and so we transferred a lot of stuff, cultural
Mm.
stuff, and intellectual stuff, cosmological stuff, and so this was the first iteration, and there were four playwrights from Africa and four playwrights from the United States, black, and it was great. We had like a fantastic experience,
And
and
I think this
yeah, I'm
might be the.
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. This
Yeah, this is
I
this
think
is you guys.
this is the last time I saw you in person. This is like 2 years ago at NYU after there's a panel that was happening after this series of things you'd done at NYU, right? Connected to
Well, this is just almost full circle because these are those people in the loft from the days that we started
yeah.
talking about. We were still,
So left
you
to
know,
right is Scott, right?
yeah, the Scott,
Scott,
and he's a sculptor for the most
right?
part, conceptual sculpture, and you and
And Anthony Bowman,
Annie Bowman,
yeah,
you know, a roustabout and
Jim.
man about town.
And this is after you 2019 NYU, like you part of that
Yeah, we had
Afro.
one of the had a workshop and some readings of three of the plays that were part of that
Mm,
project in France with artists from Africa and the United
yeah.
States.
Wow. Full circle. I mean, so much to talk about, but one of the last things I just want to ask you, like, what are you up to now? Anything in the fire? Any kind of stuff that's percolating in terms of
Well, I've got this Andrew Mellon Foundation grant,
mhm.
a residency at Illusion Theater here in Minneapolis, and so we've got like two new works coming up.
Mhm.
one is one is again, further explorations and this Afro-Atlantic culture thing with the sort of idea about griots. So I've read this piece called "A History of Religion," which is just sort of pure storytelling with musicians. And I have a collaborator who's a great musician, but he also works in theater. He works in the children's theater, actually.
Mm.
And so he's, not just a musician, but a storyteller. And so we put together a group, a percussionist and a guitarist, and we've had a little outing or workshop for it. And we like it. It's pretty cool. It's like concert like storytelling. I think it's different.
Mm.
And then there's a piece about Barb and I, my wife and I.
That premiered last year, right? Or is it just a different?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do
online.
Online. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna do it. For real in the spring.
And Barbie's your wife, just so people know.
Yeah. And she, Barb was my dramaturg, and she had a stroke, and left her with right side weakness and with aphasia. And so, dramaturg, playwright can't talk to his dramaturg, they can't talk to each other. I mean, well, we can, but so we decided, in terms of dealing with our situation, we decided to write a play, and about us to check in with each other. And so it turned out to be not too bad. I think it's a pretty good play. So we're looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to devising a work with my longtime collaborator. For years, director, Noelle Raymond, for years, she's interpreted my work. And then one day she said, well, why can't we I want to create something too. You know what I mean? Why can't we create something together? So we don't know quite where it's going. We know that there are things that we want to do. I'd like to bring to the theater my experience of doing museum work in terms of telling story with objects in a room. Maybe we could call it kind of, installation. But, instead of just like writing set and me being the sole initiator of whatever the creative act is. So I very much am looking forward to that, and that'll be supported by the grant. And in all, I tell you, you talked about how many years, this has been going on. And, I feel like I'm in the third act, and I'm grateful for that, because, a lot of artists don't get a third act, and the new things I want to do, and I feel like my work has changed. I feel it's, getting better, so I'm looking forward, and I'm very excited, I mean, I might as well be, because I don't have any other skills. I got to do this shit till I die. I got to do this shit till I die, so.
Well, I got to tell you, man, this has been great. I'm just the memories and stuff, but just the fact of what we're trying to do now, and just the work that you've done. Who would have thunk, back in 1968,
Yeah, really.
in terms of these routes to take, but I just think it's important that we share our stories and our histories and stuff, and also I feel also lucky that you and other people I know feel this chapter 3, I still got some stuff. One of the reasons I retired from teaching was like, I still got some stuff I need to do. And I think I'm at the point where I want them to do research on me, well, just the kind of stuff. But so much, I just think about the roots of like the NYU or DUMBO or the 60s and 70s and all the different creative people we were around. And so much of the work I do, I always feel those people are in me, and just having this interview just reminds me of who I'm a part of and who's a part of me. So thank you, brother, for being
thank you, man. You took me through the whole sweep and scope.
I mean,
I'm going to get on my prayer rug and have a prayer.
And the only last thing I want to say is, there was a period of time, it was a rough period of time for me with parents, my father ailing, whatever, and some people say, heck, it must be hard for you being an only child. I said, no, man, I got some brothers, and you one of the people, you kicked in, man. You came through a few
Oh man,
occasions,
I
really,
love you.
really
We love
helpful.
each other,
So
man.
I love you for that, man. So to be continued, and one day we'll do something again, So
Yeah,
find out,
I'm looking forward
whatever,
to that.
playing
I
around.
got my
Well, I got
agenda
some,
up for
yeah.
anything.
And also, I'm kind of like I'll have a conversation with you. I'm playing around with music and media and film and stuff. And nowadays, you don't have to be in the same town to do whatever. So
Exactly,
to be continued.
exactly.
Anyway, Carl,
Whoa.
I love you.
I love you too,
I
brother.
thank you for this, and everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this. There'll be more hanging. Take care of yourselves. Do what you got to do, and as they say in the old school, peace.
Peace. Love you, bro.